Okay, good evening. My name is Veronica Nunn, and I'm one of the vice chairs of Brooklyn for Peace. On behalf of our organization, we extend a heartfelt welcome to tonight's recipients and to all of you in attendance at this evening's in-person 2023 PathMakers for Peace Gala. Your ongoing support for this event, and also your generous contributions over the years. Your steadfast support has enabled us to uphold our mission of promoting peace and social justice. Now we have a full dance card, so I'm going to get right to it. I would like to introduce, we have changed the rector that was going to speak, but today we're going to have instead Reverend Lucinda Lambert. Right. I'm sorry, man. I can write it down.
I'm Reverend Leandra Lambert. I'm one of the clergy on staff here at Grace Church in Brooklyn Heights. And on behalf of our rector, the Reverend Dr. Alan Robinson, and my colleague, the Associate Reverend Erica K. Meyer, we just want to say thank you so much for being with us this evening. We are so delighted to host you all. If ever there was a time for us to be gathered together, it is in this moment. There is so much brokenness in this world. There is such division in the world. There are so many people who have been wounded, so many who have died, so many who are grieving. And so our times are calling for people like you who are going to be witnesses to the power and the work and the urgency of peace. And so I want to encourage you all to continue in the good work that you're doing. I know that people are going to be honored for their contributions of peace. But we can all, in some way, be a part of doing some good in the darkness and the brokenness and the sadness of this world. So I want to encourage each and every one of us to continue to keep fighting the good fight, knowing that even though it is a long road ahead, it is important work. And so stay committed, stay vigilant, and stay prayerful. Thank you.
Many thanks to Grace Church for allowing us to have our event in this wonderful location. I'm Carolyn Muskie-Eisenberg, co-founder of Brooklyn for Peace, and I'm also a historian, professor of history and American foreign policy. And I was given two instructions in my remarks right now. One was to be short, and the other was don't be gloomy. Well, why did that be? I was a better chance I'll be short than I won't be gloomy. I mean, everybody here, I'm sure, has in their hearts and in their brain that the horrific events that are taking place in Gaza right now, which happens in Israel, but now, the daily massacre that's taking place with the support and revenues of the U.S. government. And I think we're all, wrestling with that. But I'm trying to get out of the gloom. So, is my computer here? Okay, I will. Is that better?
There you go.
Okay. Well, you missed the part about not being gloomy. But one thing I was thinking about the history of our organization. And, I remember, and that's also, I'm going to condense it into 2 minutes. But when we were formed, it's worth remembering that it was a very gloomy time. Right? It was the Reagan years. And apart from all the places in the world that the administration was intervening and making life worse for people, the nuclear competition was just terrifying. And the relationship between the United States and the Soviet Union was really alarming. And we were thinking that there were weapons that could be fired in a half an hour and kill millions of people. It was a very frightening time when we started. And then the Reagan administration had this ridiculous idea that we should have a home port in Staten Island. Some of you remember that. And they were going to have nuclear-capable cruise missiles cruising around the harbor. So that didn't feel that great either. So we came together as a small group of parents, actually, to deal with that very scary reality. But the truth is, things got better. And that is, I think, part of the relevance of tonight. That the efforts we were making here in Brooklyn were not unique. That right across the country, people were organizing freeze movement, the anti-nuclear movement, and the movement here in the United States was reverberating all across Europe, not just in Western Europe, but in Eastern Europe. And so it turned out that we were part of a movement that was really positive, and we achieved a lot as a consequence of that. And over these years, we stayed together. Sometimes our group was a little weaker, other times stronger. Sometimes we've been very successful, and sometimes not. We were very successful in consolidating the congressional delegation here in Brooklyn in opposition to the Iraq War. And we played an important role in that, except that George Bush was president, so that wasn't that good. We were able to be really helpful in getting the Iran Treaty passed, because it was very crucial in terms of getting that through Congress, that Brooklyn representatives with the Jewish population would support it, and our work was really helpful for that. And I think right now, as we look at the situation that we're in, I mean, one thing that strikes me is that here in Brooklyn, we are ground zero for the conflict that's taking place. Our congressional delegation is very powerful. We have the minority leader of the House of Representatives, right, practically our neighbor. We have the majority leader of the Senate, practically our neighbor. We have large population of Jews and Muslims who here in Brooklyn have mostly worked together and cooperated. So we are really in a position to exert a very positive role in the conflict before. And nobody, we all know there's no guarantee. This is terrible what's happening. I'm sorry, I wasn't supposed to say it. It's terrible. But I think if we do our best, we really can play a very positive role. And just before I conclude, I just want to say a couple of very fast things about what I think has been good about our organization. Recognizing that we are not perfect, that people annoy each other quite routinely, so this is not like the ultimate inorganization. But I think there are certain things that we've had that have been really helpful. One is hopefulness, that people in our group have kept the vision of how things can be better and the determination to work for them. A second thing that I think has been very important is that we've tried to make a space for people to contribute to the group, regardless of their circumstance. If you're somebody that's working and has grandchildren or children or whatever, and you can only work for an hour, that's great. But we've really tried to be open so that at whatever level people can contribute, we can use that contribution. And the third thing I think that's been very important to us in the past, and I think it's highly relevant now, is that we have had an ability to reach out to other people in Brooklyn who do not necessarily agree with us, don't always have our vision of events, and that by reaching out in a positive spirit and having conversations, we're able to get our own movement to be bigger and more effective. And I think that need to be able to communicate in a friendly and thoughtful way is urgently needed right now. And I think we have a lot of abilities in this room to really get that work done. So there's a lot in front of us, but there's a lot to be happy. And in closing, I just want to say it's great to see everybody here. I have lots of old friends, and then other people that have become my friends on Zoom, but I really like them to know. It's nice to see the people actually in person. And just to see so many of you here, and I think probably every person in this room right now sees the urgency of working with others to try to create a more peaceful world, not just in the Middle East, but across the globe. So thank you.
Thank you, Rusty.
Well, it was long term.
That sounds great. Okay, now we're going to begin our awards segment. Anna Aguirre, our first honoree tonight, is the former executive director of United Community Centers in East New York. And she is also a dedicated advocate for her community. She initiated public health campaigns in including engaging immigrant taxi drivers in HIV, STDs awareness, expanded UCC services to include English for speakers of other language and citizenship classes, and played a vital role in the development of East New York farms for sustainable agriculture. Ms. Aguirre, who arrived in the U.S. as an asylum seeker from Peru in 1991, exemplifies resilience and community service, including personally organizing food distribution during the COVID-19 pandemic. Anna Aguirre.
Wow, this is a big crowd.
Yes.
I'm deeply honored, very, very honored. Thank you, Movement for Peace, for this recognition. I'm Sunasri. Why? My journey at UCC, at United Community Centers and the community of East New York, started 3 months after we arrived in New Jersey, the Garden State. I responded back then to a very tiny ad in the New York Times where UCC was seeking for a community organizer, health educator. My only reference about the Republic of Brooklyn was the museum, the bridge, Sahari on Atlantic Avenue, and of course the park. That was my only reference about Brooklyn. And little did I know that it would start as such an amazing and incredible 30 years complete. UCC and the people of East New York welcomed me and took me. UCC and the people of East New York welcomed me and took me into what I consider a personal journey of learning discoveries, parallels with my own country, Peru, expanding my social understanding of oppression, and most important, speaking truth to power. UCC and East New York was the arena for me and my family to get immersed in our new adopted country. As an immigrant, I was in search for a sense of belonging, like all of us. The need to reestablish my life in a space where I can relate and renew my commitment to community organizing as a tool to struggle for social justice, wherever life took me. The relationships developed over the years with young people, older people, adults, and local organizations in the community were the building blocks for trust that carry on the struggle for justice. From stopping a wood-burning incinerator, working with immigrant taxi drivers, by the way, distribute condos from their vehicles, cleaning empty lots to grow healthy and accessible food for the family, providing services to immigrants, to be from the beginning what is now East New York Farms, the first farmers market, now in 26 years in existence, mobilizing young people against police brutality, but also organizing and advocating for affordable housing for families, especially after the announcement of disaster years ago, when East New York was the first community in the city to be developed. Fighting for quality, accessible early childhood, but also for salary parity for all the staff in early childhood programs in community-based organizations where there is a huge gap disparity between the CBOs and public schools. It was working with women in the community to spread the word about sexual health and domestic violence, but also be on the ground from the very, very beginning of the COVID pandemic, distributing food and other resources for families. But all these could not be done without the energy, the inspiration, the wisdom, and the commitment of his New Yorkers, my work would be possible. This award is a big shout out to the people of East New York, to UCC and its staff. To them, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to work alongside in the never-ending struggle for a more equitable world. But if you allow me, if I have a few more minutes, I want to share a poem from a Peruvian poet, Cesar Vallejo. He wrote this poem in 1937, a few years ago. And for me, it always has been very inspiring. It always was in my book, in my long commute. And I don't like to read poetry. I love to read poetry, but I'm not good at reading it, but please stay with me. At the end of the battle, the fighter lay dead. A man came to him and said, "Don't die, I love you too much." But the corpse, oh no, went on dying. Two men came to him and again said, "Don't leave us. Take heart, come back to life." But the corpse, oh no, went on dying. Then 20, 100, 1,000, 500,000 came crying. So much love and yet so powerless against death. But the corpse, oh no, went on dying. Millions surrounded him, pleading together, "Brother, don't leave us." But the corpse, oh no, went on dying. Then all the men on earth stood around him. The corpse eyed them sadly, overwhelmed. He got up slowly, embraced the first man, and started walking.
Okay, maybe we can do that later. I'm gonna try to put two of these lines together. Oh, you wanna do that now? Come on, time, Jay.
Smile.
Nah. You just stay here.
Thank you. I'm gonna try to put these two lines together. Maybe because that's gonna go, you know, like they do in press conferences.
Sana precisa aí, né? Ele manda bem que se não precisa disso, não,
So that should kind of help you be able to project a little more, right?
Sana precisa aí, normally the Indian feedback.
No, listen.
Online also play. Also, what we have
Okay, just
again.
please don't trip over the cords. This is like an accident waiting to happen. I know all of you are not performers, so you won't know how to do this. Okay, Dr. Partha Banerjee, our next honoree, is a Kolkata-born activist, writer, educator, now based in Brooklyn. He's a champion of human rights, peace, justice, immigrant labor, and climate rights movements. He collaborates with grassroots organizations in India to combat hate, violence, bigotry, and war. With a background in journalism and a connection with Noam Chomsky dating back to 2000, Dr. Banerjee's work encompasses themes of equality and critiques corporate media's monopoly and bias. Dr. Partha Banerjee, on behalf of Brooklyn for Peace, we present you with this year's PathMakers to Peace Award. So
Hello, can you hear me? Yes. All right. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. When I taught my labor union class, I always started with this. Can you hear me? Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. And I have to repeat it 5 times before they respond. Okay, so I think I'm doing the same thing here.
Good evening.
Good evening, one more time. All right, you got the idea. All right, so, as you can see, well, first of all, I really, the formality, I really would like to thank Brooklyn for Peace from the bottom of my heart. This is an incredible honor. Really, I'm very honored, and I'm very happy and delighted and honored to have this award. This is a place where someone like Noam Chomsky got this award a few years ago, and Dr. Charlotte Phillips, Rusty, and Dr. Oliver Fine, Matt, and all these brothers and sisters and mentors, they actually gave me an opportunity to introduce Noam Chomsky to the audience a few years ago. I think that was back in 2014. And to find myself receiving the same award is just, maybe I'm living in a different world. I'm not living here. So that's number one. That's out of my way. Okay. Number two, I started off my life, well, I'm not going to, I put it in my iPhone, but then I figured out that you don't have enough memory to have my life story. So I decided not to do it. But what I did instead was that I decided that I would be talking about India. Recently, Brooklyn for Peace gave me an opportunity to do a Zoom discussion on the rise of fascism in India. And when I say rise of fascism in India, I mean rise of fascism in India. What is happening in India today, what you see in Israel and Palestine today, you are going to see the same thing happening in India tomorrow. Unless you stop these maniacs from coming back to power in 2024. That's how simple it is. I have been working against this fascist organization, RSS, and their political wing, BJP, of which Narendra Modi is a lifelong member and happens to be the Prime Minister of India. And first of all, I have to work against bigotry and politics of hate and politics of violence and fascism. That's a God-given duty. It should be a God-given duty for all of us. But guess what? On top of it, I'm working against them 24/7 because you know what? I was actually deeply involved with their organizations for almost 20 years of my life. That is something that I want to tell you. So my knowledge about this far right-wing fascist organizations in India is not an outsider's knowledge. I was with them for a long time. Why was I with them? Because my father was a lifelong activist with RSS, and he was a very close friend of India's former Prime Minister Vajpayee. They grew up together in North India. So he actually dragged me to the organization when I was 6 years old. So what would I know when I'm 6 years old? Nothing. I'm a little child. And then I was with them. Slowly but surely, I was deeply ingrained with their philosophy, with their ideology, and I slowly became a leader. And when I quit because of disillusionment with the organization's fascist philosophy, when I realized that they were all about violence and bigotry and hate and war and discrimination and misogyny and whatnot, I left. When I left, I was the state secretary of RSS's student organization of West Bengal. And then I started writing about them, writing against them, and I have written about them like for many, many years, but there is one book that I wrote that I want to mention here. I named it Gandhi's Killers, India's Rulers. The same people who killed Mahatma Gandhi immediately after India's independence are now in the seat of power in India. What a twist of history. I don't think you can ever see this type of historical turn of events ever any other place in the world. These are the same people who killed Mahatma Gandhi and they're now ruling India. What are they doing in India? They're unleashing terror. Their whole philosophy is based on Hitler and Mussolini. They were actually avowed followers of Nazism and fascism when they established the organization RSS in 1925. They actually built it along the footsteps of Hitler and Mussolini. And these are the same people who are in India's power. In 2024, there is going to be a critical parliamentary election in India. And if they come back to power one more time, they are going to destroy India as we know it. And like I said, I'm not exaggerating, if they come back to power one more time in India, they are going to turn India into another Netanyahu's Israel. So, can you afford it? My question to you, the enlightened members of Brooklyn for Peace, can you afford it? If India, 1.4 billion people strong, democratic, secular, diverse India falls in the hands of fascism, basically you've lost 1/5 or 1/6 of the world's population to fascism. Can you afford it? I have left my books here, and I also have a website. I'm not soliciting for any money or anything, but I have a blog. It's called onefinalblog.com, where I have put the book for a free download. If you can download it, read it, share it with friends and activists and peace workers and justice workers, that would be the biggest contribution to save India's democracy. I'm leaving for India in 2 weeks. Pray for me. I hope to come back to my family that I'm leaving behind, my wife, my daughter, my son-in-law, and my 2 precious grandchildren. Chances are that I will definitely be back to America, but if they come back to power, this could be my last trip to India. So pray for me. Thank you very much.
Okay, this seems to be a better microphone. Who knew? How's everyone this evening? It is so great to see so many old faces, I mean young faces, but familiar faces, I guess I should say. And they're getting ready to bring out dinner. So I was thinking we have a little bit of time, and it might be nice to just slow down, right? I I'm running through this real fast and got clock. But for the past 36 years, I guess I won. Mimi Rosenberg has dedicated herself to anti-poverty law, focusing on housing rights, eviction prevention, and anti-dislocation litigation for neighborhoods, both in public and private housing, through her work with the Legal Aid Society's Brooklyn Neighborhood Office. She's also played a significant role in founding organizations like the Citywide Action Group Against Neighborhood Destruction and for Low Rent Housing and the Black United Front Support Committee. Ms. Rosenberg is also the producer of the multi-award-winning labor-oriented radio program, Building Bridges, which is on WBAI. And it is aimed at empowering and organizing for social change. Mimi Rosenberg, on behalf of Brooklyn for Peace, we present you with this year's PathMakers to Peace Award. So she can come over here. So this is yours.
Yeah, the first mistake was telling a lawyer that they had 5 minutes.
Oh, 10. They got 10.
Thank you. First of all, I am my initial. I believe that we will win. 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 Absolutely, and the reason why is because of the people that are here and have been here for decades. Every single one of you committed to what? To equal rights and justice. All right. And you can't have peace without equal rights and justice. That is the meat and potatoes upon which you build. Some people are working, I'm working for peace. No, you're working for equal rights and justice to establish democracy, which may take us to peace. So first of all, to some of my oldest friends, I must, like Deirdre Jordan and Ed Goldman. There are people like Tom Gogan and Gloria and Jackie DeSalvo and Olive Klein and so many more folks who do incredible work like Domestic Workers United and stuff. I am so really humbled and honored to be here. And the only non-gloomy thing I can think about is that my relatives just sent me a disinvite to a wedding and asked me to return one of the most grotesque dresses that I have ever seen. And instead of calling me a self-hating Jew, which I used to be called, they just said they couldn't relate to a virulent anti-Semite. That I take exception to. And try to have a discourse about the differentiation between Zionism, the effort to completely Judaicize all of the historic land of Palestine, and why that is exclusionary, exclusivist, supremacist, and has nothing to do with the religious tenets. And Judaism is a religion, not a nation, but with the religious tenets and liberalcy of at least my family's tradition. But they asked me to return the dress, and I consider that a privilege. And I had a serious problem in trying to get them to understand and realize the distinction between being anti-Zionist and anti-Semitic. But then I realized the reason I couldn't get through, no matter what I communicated, the beautiful letters that I had from people like Jeff Halper, who's the head of the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions. I figured maybe that would be some creds. He lives in Jerusalem, he's a Jewish anthropologist. But he's against Zionism because Zionism also is destroying the Palestinian people. It is the state ideology. It's gone from an ideology to a movement to practice and policies which are enforced by an apartheid-type structure. And I can think of nothing about peace. I can only think of Zionism must be dismantled. And then we can talk about from the river to the sea with the right of return and establishing some kind of egalitarian secular state. Because, my dear relatives, a theocracy cannot, by definition, be a democracy. Can we acknowledge that? But I had a sad awakening today. I am a legal aid attorney. That is my job and vocation. It does not define my political life. But I work very hard with a group of colleagues to get the Association of Legal Aid Attorneys, which is part of the UAW, to pass a resolution against Israeli war bonds, to essentially get the U.S. to move the money to defund Israel and so on. And there's a debate, and we'll see if it passes. We have a special union email line, and there was a lot of debate and a lot of vitriol and ugliness, not substantive debate. In any event, the people at Legal Aid, and Legal Aid is presumed to be, and I've worked there for a long time, a social service organization committed to the indigent in housing and social services and getting SNAP benefits, as well as being a public defender, employment law, and so on. And we have a very large grouping of people of Arab ancestry that we represent. Numbers of Palestinians and so on. And what do you know? We have an immigration practice and a homeless families' rights practice. So the discourse was very, very hostile from many attorneys. That's fine. I welcome discourse. I welcome debate. It's how you learn. It's how you grow. It's how you progress. It's how you change and develop. So what happened is one of the attorneys sent the New York Post the internal postings from our union email list. And some of the most aggressive people there, understandably, were those who are hurt most directly, and they were people of Arab ancestry and Palestinian people, who have been completely ignored by our institution. We have grief counselors for every kind of hurt and discrimination. You say the word Palestine, and you were told you were anti-Semitic, and you were creating a hostile work environment, and you were suspended. And that's exactly what happened to me, merely proposing that Dr. Rashid Khalidi, who has the Edward Said Chair at Columbia University, maybe come to speak for anybody who wanted to attend, to lay out a little bit more about the 75, actually the 100-year history of the efforts to disenfranchise, to exile, massacre, and now I think annihilate a restive population, the Palestinians. So that's a hostile work environment. In any event, the New York Post got a hold of it, and the next suggestion is that the Legal Aid Society be defunded because it is a rampantly anti-Semitic, racist organization. Racist being the Jews are being harmed. So the next thing that happened, we had an emergency meeting called by the Legal Aid Society, who I thought would stand up brilliantly. No, I didn't. But I hope they would stand up brilliantly and say, no, that's not who we are. We believe in amicus briefs to support the cases that are filed for genocide against Israel at this juncture. We believe in internalizing our values about equal rights and justice for our clients. Instead, what they told us, you must take down any Palestinian work of art, any poster. If you say anything in the office, including using union time to have a debate about a resolution for the U.S. to cease funding Israeli militarism, you will be creating a hostile work environment and we will suspend you. So I say that because this new McCarthyism is really there. It's very virulent, whether it's suspension of the student organizations at Columbia, etc. And where that takes me now is I want to propose here, because this isn't about being honored, it's about continuing to educate, agitate, and organize, to empower we the people. And I think empowering we the people is always about all the work that we do having two fundamental components, and that is one, beginning to look at the people assuming state power. How do you do that? It's a question. But always that's the relationship between reform and revolution, and all we do to build in, yes, an anti-capitalist perspective, and two, fundamentally an anti-bias, anti-racism perspective to the work we do, because the reason my relatives can see a child coated with concrete lying there, some sort of peculiar, awkward statue, dead after being taken out of the rubble and held by her father. The reason, it doesn't matter, and the number 11,000 and 12,000 doesn't matter, because they bought into the remnants of settler colonialism, which always is about dehumanization of the people. It's about creating a supremacist ideology and a hierarchy. And when you internalize that and you fail to reckon with it, which is what happens in this country around the issues of race, then you buy into Islamophobia, anti-Muslim racism, and the child is there, whether it's 1 or 20 or 4,000, doesn't matter, because you are supreme. God, they better start reading W.E.B. Du Bois, Black Reconstruction, and Frantz Fanon, and C.L.R. James. So I have a proposal for us, because we are, as we know, participating through the funding of our country, its license and so on, in a genocide, in a Holocaust that's been taking place. A Holocaust, it is the Trail of Tears, the Palestinian, it is a horrifying thing, and it's in our name. We have to say no more genocide in our name. So I think that this marvelous group of intellectuals and activists, Mike check, what we can do, what about a teaching? Oh yeah, those old style teachings, an all-day teaching emanating from the greatest of the boroughs, Brooklyn, and really to begin to educate, agitate, and organize those people who we can reach and who are open, and again show, not just with boots on the ground, which we must do every day, but to show intellectually and build the informational base so that we can begin to say no more genocide in our name, cease the funding, the right to return, stop the siege, lift the occupation, and from the river to the sea, not destructively, from the river to the sea, to reclaim with the right of return every bit of that land for a one state, if that is what the Palestinians wish, but moving to a one secular state with equal rights and justice for all. And I really would love to come out of tonight with a group of people to work on putting together a forum, because even those of us who've been at every demonstration need to sharpen our expression and so on. And then just lastly, what I want to say is that when we organize, I feel it imperative, if we are going to move, these are not the time for revolution, but when we can't even get an Elizabeth Warren, we can't even get a Bernie Sanders, we can't get a Bernie Sanders to say ceasefire now. And I think that's about racism. I don't think he was ever very good at understanding and recognizing and reckoning with settler colonialism, any more than the Zionists are. So I think that the principles of when we organize, and we do the practical work, we have to instill the political values. There were groups like the Community Control of School movement that did that. Groups like the Black Panther Party and the American Indian movement and the Young Lords that tried to build in to their service to the people a greater sense of their empowerment, meaning state power. And then, because another world is possible, and when we have the tools, we will make it so, and in our organizing, always, 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 to use those three tenets that Martin Luther King set up for us, those three pillars. Well, those pillars that uphold capitalism, racism and bias, to defeat that and work against that in everything, militarism and war, to tear down like the walls of Jericho, and the third one was the economics, the inequality of wealth and of poverty. And those are still the fundamental premises I think we need to organize around. And then what? I believe that we will win. What are we? I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. And anybody who wants to cohere afterwards, talk about maybe a major teaching, let's do it. For equal rights and justice, no more genocide in our name. Pay me the way. Other people here are going to be subject to this new McCarthyism. Young people are frightened. They're getting kicked out of school. Organizations are being disbanded. People are talking about losing their jobs. Please give them the strength of your wisdom and your experience to say, I believe that we will win, hold strong, equal rights and justice, and thank you. You are such wonderful peacemakers.
Mention her, she's here in the house. I appreciate her coming out and supporting the Sarah Lee Whitson, currently the Executive Director of Democracy for the Arab World Now, was previously the Executive Director of Human Rights Watch's Middle East and North Africa Division for 16 years. In this role, she oversaw work across 19 countries and conducted numerous advocacy and investigative missions addressing issues like armed conflict, accountability, legal reform, and migrant workers' rights. Ms. Whitson is a prolific writer and commentary on human rights and foreign policy in the Middle East, contributing to various international and regional media outlets and frequently appearing on major news networks like Al Jazeera, BBC, NPR, MSNBC, and CNN. Sarah Lee Whitson, on behalf of Brooklyn for Peace, I'd like to present you with our PathMakers for Peace Award.
To Brooklyn for Peace. You guys have heard a lot of talks tonight, so I will try not to take too much of your time. But I should say, when I first moved to Brooklyn in 1997, pregnant with my daughter, Lena, who's sitting back here, a student at NYU Law School, Brooklyn for Peace at the time was Brooklyn Parents for Peace, and it was the very first organization that I joined in Brooklyn. It has been wonderful to see this organization grow and expand its work in so many important ways, all near and dear to my heart. I am so touched by this recognition by an organization that speaks to my values, and it feels great to be among friends. I'm honored by the work of my fellow award recipients tonight. This is really moving for someone like me, whose work is not usually the most popular in the mainstream political discourse of our times. So thank you for that. I never thought of myself as a peace activist, although indeed in the decades that I've worked on exposing and battling American warmongering in the Middle East, I realized that peace is indeed our goal. There may not be all that much we here in Brooklyn can do about the wars and conflicts around the world. There are so many. But there's a lot we can and must do to scrutinize and challenge the wars and conflicts made by our own government. Indeed, as citizens of this still free country, our greatest responsibility is to ensure that whatever good our democratically elected government does in our name, it does no harm. These harms are experienced most profoundly when our government deprives people of the right to life, the most fundamental of all human rights, by killing them or arming and protecting the governments that kill them. And it is important that we speak clearly about what is happening, killing. I started my peace activism in earnest in 1991, while still a law student, exposing the impact of the 1991 U.S. war in Iraq, a war that went far beyond its mandate to free Kuwait, and morphed rapidly into a debilitating bombardment of Iraq that caused the deaths of 10,000s of Iraqi children deprived of clean water and a functioning medical system. Few under 40 here even remember that war or understand how it spawned over a decade of horrific sanctions on Iraq, followed by the catastrophic invasion and occupation of Iraq, our country's biggest foreign policy blunder since the Vietnam War, for which there has been no accountability. In the decades since, I have dedicated my career and my voice to advocating for human rights and democracy in the Middle East and North Africa. And sadly, much of that time has been forced into focusing on our own government's role in repression and war in the region. Not just in the Iraq War, most readily understood and condemned as a war of aggression by the United States, but our government's role in aiding and abetting war, tyranny, and repression across the Middle East. America's support for the dictatorships and apartheid governments in the region presents the greatest anomaly between the rhetoric that successive administrations, Republican and Democrat, trumpet to the world about the rule of law, rights, democracy, and the reality of more U.S. forces present in the region than all the other governments in the world combined, and more weapons sold to abusive regimes in the region than all the other governments in the world combined. In recent years, we have seen the catastrophes that U.S. support for the senseless war in Yemen caused the people of that country, with millions brought close to starvation after a 6-year siege and hundreds of thousands killed with American bombs. We've seen what the impunity of dictators confident in their protection and support from the United States has wrought for the people of Egypt, where torture is so widespread and systematic that human rights organizations have concluded that it amounts to crime against humanity, where Saudi Arabia can target and kill a journalist for the Washington Post and my organization's founder, and jail and torture women activists because it knows the U.S. has its back. And now today, this past month, we have watched in horror as U.S.-backed Israeli forces have rained down what can only be described as a mass terrorist campaign against Palestinians, discarding with any pretense of respect for the laws of war, shielded from accountability by the U.S. veto in the Security Council. In just over 40 days, they have killed over 12,000 people, with estimates of another 10,000 buried under the rubble, with U.S. bombs. The vast majority of these people killed with U.S. bombs, with our taxpayer dollars, are women and children in Gaza. This is to say nothing of the tens of thousands of Palestinians who have been injured for life. They have bombarded hospitals, schools, mosques, and churches like this one. Targeted and killed 43 journalists. Treated as targets medical workers, ambulance drivers, and doctors. With our taxpayer-funded support, our government has done everything in its power to block a ceasefire, despite not only the overwhelming demands of the rest of the world, but the overwhelming demand of the citizens of this country, the vast majority of whom support a ceasefire. Has used his pulpit to repeat lies, propaganda, and misinformation, while our Defense Department has secretly transferred more weapons to Israel, all without a trace of the end-use monitoring and even minimal pretend compliance with U.S. laws on weapons transfers. This war didn't start on October 7, when Hamas viciously attacked Israeli civilians, as you all know. I have documented enough war crimes and crimes against humanity by Israel in Gaza, the West Bank, and Lebanon to tell you that everything we see in Gaza today has been done in smaller doses for the past decades. And every abuse by the Israeli government, from its permanent occupation, land theft and annexation, apartheid rule, and now what over 50 genocide scholars have concluded is a genocide underway in Gaza. These have been supported and protected by our government. What's been most shocking here in the United States is the extent to which we've seen a massive effort to sanction, censor, and silence the growing millions who've spoken out against these atrocities. Universities banning student groups, police using excessive force against protesters, cities restricting protests, and most insidiously, the corporate world and private sector creating blacklists to cancel, sanction, fire, and ban ordinary Americans who have expressed concern for Palestinian rights. Law firms, real estate associations, finance empires, tech firms, they have made no secret that they will punish and exclude these people in an effort at McCarthyism that goes well beyond anything Joe McCarthy could dream of. What the Biden administration and our Congress have made clear is that they will discard international law, like the Geneva Conventions, refusing to recognize their applicability to the situation in Palestine. They will burn down the International Criminal Court. They will sully the First Amendment, the rights of our own citizens here in America, even ignoring the will of the votes and undermining our democracy if it means shielding Israel from criticism. We know from our local representatives here in Brooklyn who have failed us, Speaker Jeffries, who's had not a word to say about Israeli war crimes, the the new Representative Dan Goldman flexing his partisanship with efforts to help Americans in Israel, not Americans in Gaza, flee. And worst of all, Senator Schumer, who has bizarrely justified his pro-Israel stance by telling us the Torah gave the land to Israel. They have sacrificed the most basic values of humanity to kowtow to the almighty dollars that come from special interest groups that fund their campaigns. We must hold them accountable, for this is treason against American values and principles. I hope that we are now starting to understand that the costs of U.S. policies over there have consequences for the people over here. For foreign governments buying up American military and political officials like the cheap migrant labor they subsist on abroad, swallowing up massive chunks of our sporting institutions, fashion, finance, tech, banking, news, gaming firms, using their lobbyists and agents to buy up our candidates, and using their sway to now silence our voices and export their repression to our very own shores. The stakes of fighting for peace and freedom are higher than ever. What's at risk now is our very own democracy here at home. There is so much we can do and are doing. Thank you, Mimi, for your work in challenging the people who are trying to silence us from speaking out against these atrocities. Our organization at Dawn and so many of our partner organizations, including Brooklyn for Peace, are demanding a dramatic reform of U.S. policies that have been such a total failure for the people of the Middle East and the people of our country. We know the odds are stacked against us. We know the work ahead of us, and we know that the citizens of this country are on our side. I thank you all for being part of this struggle. It's wonderful to feel like I'm among friends. Our hope remains the old God that inspires us still, inspires me still. The people united will never be defeated. Thank you.
It's gold, it's a flower, it's got a pearl in the center of it. Anyway, it's going to be on the table. Oh, it's yours. Thank you. Okay, so we need to get moving. Our final award this evening goes to an organization, Veterans for Peace, New York City Chapter 34. Is an active group of over 100 members dedicated to building a culture of peace, dismantling the war economy, eliminating nuclear weapons, and abolishing war. They received the VFP Chapter of the Year Award, and their president, Susan Schnall, also serves as the National Board President of VFP. The chapter participates in a range of peace and social justice activities, from parades, vigils, educational forums, and support for various causes, including whistleblower Julian Assange and climate action. Veterans for Peace, I'm not sure who's accepting it, but on behalf of Brooklyn for Peace, we present you with this year's PathMakers for Peace Award, and then we grab that. Yes. You're welcome.
Take your picture.
So Bob Malback and Anthony Donovan from Veterans for Peace. Thank you so much for this award, especially Charlotte and the Board of Brooklyn for Peace. It's a great honor for our organization and former warriors to be recognized as peacemakers, along with everyone else here tonight. Unfortunately, our chapter president, Susan Schnall, could not be with us tonight, but I can tell you how extremely proud she is of this award for our chapter. Susan is also currently serving as national president of Veterans for Peace, doing a great job helping to fulfill our primary mission, which is to abolish war as a means of resolving conflict. Increase public awareness of the causes and costs of war, and seek justice for all victims of war, which are overwhelmingly civilian populations, caught in the crossfire. Actually, we all, in a sense, are victims of war today. So many of our tax dollars are wasted on militarism while neglecting critical human needs, including health care, education, housing, and the climate crisis. The U.S. spends over half of our discretionary budget on war and militarism, more than the next 10 nations combined, including China, Russia, and Iran. With the advanced weaponry of the 21st century, and fed by media, misinformation, wars are very easy to start, but so hard to end, as we've seen in Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, and on and on. To learn more about Veterans for Peace, including our detailed position statements on the conflicts in Gaza and Ukraine, as well as the climate crisis, nuclear abolition, military spending, by going to our national website, www.veteransforpeace.org. I'd also like to acknowledge some of our New York City chapter members here tonight, especially active associate members Tom Dogan, his wife Gloria, Lyndon Revensky, and Anthony Donovan, as well as our friends Lydia Lee, Lois Cunningham, Anna and Ahmad Shirazi. War is a crime, absolutely unnecessary in the 21st century. Let us all continue to dedicate ourselves to peacemaking, put an end to violence and injustice in our society. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Bob is a tireless worker for our chapter, writing all the minutes, taking all the notes, but always there. So, out of four grandparents, 3 are born, raised, married here in Brooklyn. One in Harlem, New York. I don't know what happened to her. But anyway, my parents are born here, and my father was a historian, a world historian, and he loved hearing people's stories around the world. When he met someone, he wanted to know where they're from, and he'd talk about their history. Don't we like that? Isn't that the great thing about New York? That we really love learning about other people and other cultures, where they're from. That's how we deal with war. We get to know people. And my mother was a person, the only thing I can say about it, not the only, but a stranger is a friend you haven't met yet, right? You've heard that phrase, but she lived it. And isn't what that word enemy is? We need the word enemy to fight our wars, to get that money for our weapons. And at the end of this we'll give money for the peace aspect. But anyway, that's how we keep enemies, but strangers are friends we haven't met yet. My mother exemplified that. And Veterans for Peace. Right now we have Jerry Condon, who is the manager of the Golden Rule. Many of you probably came to see the boat, the 1958 boat. Tried to stop it. The Veterans for Peace resurrected this boat that sailed in the Pacific in 1958. Came here to New York, and thank you. Many people came to visit the boat. And but Jerry right now is at Gaza, at the gates of Gaza in Egypt. So people in this room, he was former president of the Veterans for Peace. People in this room act, you vote, you sign petitions, but you get out there and you do things. And I love the fact that Brooklyn for Peace started with families. You started small, you started with that family connection. And from there, you wanted to protect your families. And that's the way it always begins. And I just want to thank Brooklyn for Peace. Thank you for standing up in the early 1990s against the nuclear port coming to New York. Thank you for that wisdom. My gosh. Thank you for 9/11 hit. Thank you, Brooklyn for Peace, for standing up and saying, no, wait a second. War is not the answer here. Let's find out what's behind this. So, thank you for that. And some of us here were involved with the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons, which was a huge, huge miracle of an accomplishment. The rest of the world getting together and saying, okay, Russia, China, the United States, mainly the United States, you're not gonna do anything about nuclear weapons. You're gonna just keep pushing it down the road and keep building. Well, 122 countries got together, worked really hard for years, and passed this new miracle that we have, which is this new international law, this treaty. But I was there, and when the vote came in, 122 nations for, it was electric. And who stood up in front of me with a banner? Guess. Two guesses here. Brooklyn for Peace was in that room. I was so thrilled. I was like, okay, so those are my people. So anyway, thank you, Brooklyn for Peace, for always being there. That's 2017. So always being there. And I think most of you know that the second meeting of states is happening in a week and a half at the UN. Please, in any way you can, go up with a banner or speak. And go up there. We'll try to be up there as well. But that's, Veterans for Peace also, we have Zooms, as most people here, when we've been Zooming. And last night, we had Linda Sansor. Sorry, thank you. And Ian Elahani. And some of you know these people, we've known them for years. But what an amazing thing. I just want to share what Linda said last night. She said, I just got off the phone. It's hard to get on the phone with people in Gaza. It's hard to get through. People's electricity go out, etc. But she's been speaking to family and friends in Gaza. And she had a message to give us last night. So I want to share that message with you. This message was, yes, it's true. We've lost family. Yes, it's true. We've lost friends. And yes, it's true. We might die tonight. They're telling her this. But don't worry, she said. We're okay. Can you believe that? I almost cried. Don't worry. We're okay. Because we know you're out there. We know you people in America, and people are starting to talk about us. People are finally beginning to hear about the oppression of 70 years. They're finally waking up. People are marching. Young people are marching. They're thrilled about that in Gaza, the people she's speaking to. So, she said, we could die. We know we could die. But don't worry about us. We're okay. You just keep doing what you're doing. That's what I want to tell everyone in this room. I hope you hear that message straight from Gaza. This is yesterday. That keep doing what you're doing. They really are very thankful. Thank you very much. It's a great
So as this event begins to wind down, I've been asked to do two things. To announce that downstairs there will be take-home containers for all the food that was left over. So please go down and take food home. But more importantly, the world is basically in pieces, and looking for pieces, trying to put it together. That we need more Brooklyn for Pieces, and we need a larger Brooklyn for Peace. And so my job tonight is to ask you to help us grow. And help us grow by making a contribution tonight or until 11 o'clock tomorrow evening, because we have a matching fee of $3,000 for any monies that come in between now and 11 o'clock tomorrow night. So, if you have any inclination to help us, you can do it right here by opening your journal, and inside there's a piece of paper with a QR code. You can pay right now with a credit card by taking this QR code and giving us a contribution. You also have envelopes, and you can put a check in or a commitment in that envelope, and we will get it all. So please, be generous, take those envelopes, sign, look at the QR code and give us some of your well-earned money that you might be using for dinner tomorrow night. You've had your dinner tonight, so help us with your dinner tomorrow night's money and give us a check or a commitment. Thank you very much.
So if you notice, there's these nice little baskets that are going down the table. They're actually from a village in Africa, and the women weave those, and it really, when we purchase them, it actually helps the village. It goes to the schools, it goes to health and education, which I mentioned.
You can also help Brooklyn for Peace, aside from money, by becoming a participating activist in the organization. Your help is needed.
Okay, so
Brooklyn for Peace will be setting up a table on this Saturday and subsequent Saturdays to encourage people in the community to call for a ceasefire in Gaza, among other things. Find somebody who's in Brooklyn for Peace and ask them what you can do.
okay, so yes, there are activities. Please check our website. Sign up for our newsletter. Our newsletter goes out every week, and we have all the information there. And there's a petition on Gaza downstairs, as I understand it. QR code. If you can donate, please do, because we're coming up on our 40th year next year, and we would like to still be here. So, all right, while all this is going on, I drove in from Woodstock, New York. I'm a Woodstock hippie. And so I'm going to have to get out of here sooner than later. And before I do, I just want to say this. I'd like to offer a special thank you to those who worked so hard behind the scenes to make this evening a success. I'd like to thank Matt Weinstein, who will take incredible pictures. To Ann for videotaping, even though Matt's head was in the way most of the time. A thank you to, well, it wasn't Reverend Erica Myers, though she was speaking, but it's, I'm sorry, I'm over a certain age, I can't remember who this is. Ms. Lambert, Reverend Lambert, I think that's better to say. Leandra Lambert, Reverend Leandra Lambert, who gave us some opening statements. To Grace's Church staff, to Bassett's Caterers, our advertisers, our sponsors, and to all of you for coming out tonight in solidarity. We had some great honorees who spoke, and they spoke from the heart, and that's the most important thing, is one-to-one from the heart. Everything else is just bull. I trust you had a great time, and I hope that you are inspired and ready to go. Yet another round, okay, as you continue your work in support for peace and social justice. Have a wonderful holiday season, safe travels, and as Dr. Charlotte Phillips says, onward.
Big Marv.